All right. Looks like everybody has found a seat that's going to be here this evening. Thank you so much for coming out on a really, really blustery January day. Welcome to our January meeting for CRTPO. And for the new folks, if you're still figuring out what that C means, the Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization, welcome. We do have a lot of new faces, so to get started, we're going to go around the room, everybody introduce themselves and what municipality that you represent. We'll probably do this again in February because we're missing a number of people due to meeting conflicts and some illness. So we're going to start over here to our far-flung friends in Troutman. Jerry, you want to start us out?
Jerry Oxford, Town of Troutman. This is my first meeting, so I'm looking forward to learning a lot and hopefully catching up.
Welcome, Jerry.
Thank you, Jones. Here, St. Tony, I've got none. Dale Dalton, you go.
Amelia Stinson Wesley, Pineville.
Tony Lathrop, NCDOT Division 10.
Nick Walsh, Town of Huntersville, and yes, this is my first meeting.
Ed Drake, City of Charlotte.
Neil Burke, CRTPO Secretary.
I'm Lisa Qualls. I represent the town of Mooresville.
Mark Tilley, I'm on the Union County Land Use Board.
Jim Walker.
Michael Osborne, Town of Cornelius.
Rick Becker, Town of Mineral Springs.
David Boyce, Wesley Chapel, Union County.
Great. And we'll let our new friends from Waxhaw jump in. We were just doing a quick introduction. We didn't want to miss you.
Robert Murray, Mayor of Waxhaw.
Great. Welcome, everybody that's new. Again, we'll probably do this again in February if you're okay with that, just so we can get to know one another as we go through the days together. So we've officially called everything to order, and I'm going to turn everything over to Neil Burke as we do at our first meeting in January is election of officers. So Neil, if you would preside over that, that would be great.
Thank you, Lisa. At this time, I'll go ahead and open the floor for nominations for the 2024 Chair of the CRTPO. Okay, I've received a nomination from Mayor Becker. Do we have a second? Second from Commissioner Osborne. Are there any additional nominations for Chair of the CRTPO Board for 2024? Okay, we will go ahead and close the nominations for Chair. All those in favor of electing Lisa Qualls as Chair of the CRTPO Board for 2024, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Chair
Thank you.
Qualls.
I think that just means that nobody else wanted to step up. So- Or that we had very few people that have been here longer than a year. So I'm honored to be part of the organization and to help lead our group to make some great decisions this year. And with that, we need a vice chair. So Neil, do you want to preside over that as well?
Of course. At this point, I will open the floor for nominations for the 2024 CRTPO Vice Chair.
I move to appoint Brad Richardson, Vice Chair.
Do we have a second?
Second.
So we have we have a motion from Mayor Becker and a second from Commissioner Boyce. Are there any other nominations for Vice Chair? Is anyone opposed to Commissioner Brad Richardson from the town of Stallings serving in the role of Vice Chair for 2024? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Congratulations, Brad.
So that's what happens when you don't come to a meeting. So Brad represents the town of Stallings, and he will be with us at the next meeting. So he has agreed. We had talked earlier if he would be open to that nomination. So he won't be surprised. So you don't have to call and go, hey, you should have been there. Yeah, exactly. And I know we did our introductions already. Renee, we missed you. Would you introduce everybody to yourself and who you represent?
I'm Renee Garner. I'm a commissioner for the town of Matthews.
Super. Is there anybody else that came in that I missed? Great. Okay. We'll move on. Everybody should have gotten an electronic copy of the agenda. And if not, they had a paper copy out at where you signed in. So we're going to adopt the agenda. Any adjustments to the agenda that we need? If not, can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So move.
Commissioner Driggs has made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by our friend, Mr. Osborne and Cornelius. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Going to open up the public comment period. Do we have anybody, Neil, that signed up for public comment?
Not aware of any public comments.
Okay, great. Well, we will move on to the ethics awareness and conflict of interest reminder. Neil, would you help us with that?
In accordance with the State Government Ethics Act, it is the duty of every board member to avoid conflict of interest. Does any board member have any known conflict of interest with respect to any of the matters coming before the board today? If so, please identify the conflict and refrain from any participation in the particular matter involved.
Anyone have anyone? Not hearing any? Be great. And just, I'm going to add a plug in there, and maybe you're going to do this at the end of the meeting. If you've not filled out your required ethics form that's was emailed to you, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, please see Neil afterwards. But those are very, very important for you and your alternate to get completed so that you can be a member in good standing to be able to vote. So very, very important to do that. I know it's a pain. We all get to do it, but please, if you've not done that, you'll start to get gentle reminders by Neil, and then they go from gentle to a little more stern. So please help out with that. On the consent agenda, a couple of items on there as far as our board minutes, the tip amendments, and our performance-based planning 2024 targets that everybody's been able to take a look at. Can we get a motion to approve?
So
the
moved.
Consent agenda.
Second.
Driggs has made the motion and Mayor Becker's got the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We are humming right along, and item number 7, our CRTPO discretionary funds project call recommended projects. Jennifer Stafford with her cape and magic wand.
Well, if I may first, I oversee the tip amendments that you just approved, and for the newer members, they will oftentimes be in your packet. If not monthly, maybe every other month, something like that. We go over this, of course, with the TCC who recommends your approval of these, but we also go over these with the TCC staff members who attend our weekly transportation staff meetings. And so they have an opportunity to ask any questions, but certainly if you have questions, please feel free to reach out. The majority, if 99% of the time, these amendments are created by NCDOT. We need our transportation improvement plan to match their state transportation improvement plan. So they're just sort of copying what they're doing. Occasionally, we will initiate a tip amendment, and that will be described in the memo. So you will know when it's maybe a discretionary funded project that, for example, needed to be canceled or something that NCDOT wouldn't control. It needs to be controlled first from your board. That's how that would go. So I just wanted to give you that since you'll be seeing quite a few tip amendments. So tonight I wanted to give you a presentation on the 2023 fall call recommended projects from the Project Oversight Committee. Has worked hard this year, as usual, to develop a recommended list. This presentation is information only, so we will return in February. The TCC will recommend to the board to approve discretionary funded projects from the 2023 fall call, and then amend the tip that I just spoke about. And so you will see the fall call tip amendments. They will not be on consent. They will be part of the action. So next month, we may probably have consent tips, amendments, and then the amendments for the fall call. So this year we had $62.4 million of funds available to program. And again, for the newer members, I'm just going to take a little bit of time. For the older, for the returning folks, maybe this is a little bit of a refresher. We this year we had two funding types. One is Surface Transportation Block Grant, direct attributable, and this is our most flexible funding type. So we typically call it STBGDA. In the TIP and the STIP, sometimes it's just BGDA. Sometimes these acronyms, the funding types change. We get more funding types, or NCDOT might change an acronym. So we follow that. So again, in the TIP amendments, you might see BGDA. Carbon reduction program funds are relatively new. They came from the IIJA. Oh, I should know what that is. Infrastructure Investment Job Act. A couple years ago. And so these flow through, again, NCDOT. They come to the MPO to be programmed. So we had 6.3 million available for the next couple years to program. You can see the funding total amounts for the next few fiscal years. Sorry, I got a bunch of notes. Let me go back. So the Carbon Reduction Fund program is meant to reduce emissions in our area. So, you know, EV chargers is a really, really good example, and you'll see some of that in your packet tonight. We worked with Mecklenburg County Air Quality in developing scoring, and they also reviewed the applications. So we received 3 applications for carbon reduction funds, and the project, you'll see shortly, the Project Oversight Committee will recommend all of those. We received 33 applications total, 3 planning studies, 9 highway, non-highway, 7 shortfalls. So projects that we use the term shortfall and supplemental sometimes interchangeably. So if a project has a shortfall, they're going to request supplemental funds. So I'll try to stay with the word supplemental because I think it's easier to understand. But so you might see that go back and forth. So we had 25.5 million requested amount for that, and 2 shortfalls or supplemental requests for bike ped projects. Again, the scores for your projects are in your packet. I will say that I try to share these numbers. Highway, the average match for highway this year was 35%. That's quite a match. And that's one thing that you can control your score on. The awarded average match on highway is as high as 40%. That's quite a bit. And I wasn't here when the policy was developed, but the theory is that the higher the match, the more the funds go around. For the bike ped or non-highway, the average is about 30%. And so I feel like each year this is getting a little bit more competitive. We try to educate your staff as we go through the application process. We had, again, 33 applications, and you'll see in a minute, 25 projects are being recommended for 12 agencies. So that's pretty good, I think. The Project Oversight Committee, again, is a subcommittee of the TCC. They use a board-approved discretionary policy guide. That policy guide was developed or approved in 2019. We've done a few tweaks, and some of those tweaks have been as recent as last fall. We added in some inflation. We tweaked a little bit here and there, but basically, I think the policy overall is working well. So I'm sure you all appreciate that. The Project Oversight Committee met on December 7th in person in this room for a couple hours, and we've reviewed the applications. We reviewed scores. We reviewed the funding type. They recommended they had a short list then. They reconvened on December 14th. Sort of to confirm the discussions that happened on the 7th. And then they met again in January, on January 11th, to review a project score from Waxhaw. So Waxhaw has a road called Helms Road, and they would like to extend that in town. They're requesting just over 7 million with a 20% match. Their safety score, and you will see it in your packet, they asked to have it reviewed, and then they wanted to know how we would score it next year. And we really appreciate those questions. And in reviewing it, what became apparent with me is, yes, I think it can be a little bit higher. As I was running options, the ranking wasn't changing. But with a road being extended, we have some new location. And when you have a new location, you don't have all the data that you would have on a road widening project, for example. And so the POC reviewed the score, even though I think everybody probably agreed it was a little bit too low. The ranking stayed the same, even with a higher score. They would like to revisit the scoring. So the POC would like to talk with, maybe get some presentations with the modeling group on ways that they can forecast better what types of volumes would go on these new roads. So we've only had a handful of new roads in the past, and they've been just a little bit easier. With this one, it's just really confusing. And the fact that you can pull scores from several ways just didn't make it fair. So I think this will be a good discussion for the Project Oversight Committee. We have asked somebody from Waxhaw to join the Project Oversight Committee and apply some of the thoughts that we're thinking about on ways to score, to see if it's logical and makes sense for their future applications. So I wanted to let you know that we take these requests very serious. The Project Oversight Committee, when they met on January 11th, that was the only topic that they had. So that was the focus. This is the list of recommended highway projects, and you will see that especially in the longer scores, that Cornelius had a pretty good list of shortfalls, or they needed supplemental funds. The Project Oversight Committee is recommending to fund 4 out of their 6. The other 2 are scheduled for construction either late in 24 or even in 25. So the Project Oversight Committee felt that they had time to come back and request funds for the other 2 shortfalls and get a little bit more new projects. Matthews had a small shortfall on a quite large project. And then you'll see the 6 newer projects. Here's the carbon reduction program funds, the applications. We received 3. Again, remember we had just over 6 million. The POC recommended all of those. So some solar chargers for Indian Trail, ITS, or intelligent transportation system infrastructure for City of Charlotte. And then CATS has wants to run a battery electric bus on I-485 in the Ballantyne area. And then the bike ped, again, there was the one, actually, I still have a typo in there. The second one down is Charlotte, and that is an existing project as well. So there was 2 shortfall projects for bike ped, about $2 million. And then you can see they're recommending, what is that, 6 more? So I think that's pretty good. And then finally, the planning project applications. The POC tries to target $500,000 or 1% of the available funds. Sorry, I'm too short. And so if we did 1%, it would be about 600,000. Again, the target 500 to 1%. This amount is clearly below that. The planning funded projects are usually 80% federal, 20% non or local funds. And so you you don't need to try to, it's always 80-20 on planning. I probably will go out on a limb and say, I don't think we've ever turned down a planning application. So they're small enough typically that we can fund them all. So that's a good thing to keep in mind on projects or master plans that you would like to have funded. And it's a good value, 80 cents on the dollar. And so here's a summary of the projects. Highway, again, there's the applications received, the 33, and then the number of projects, 25, that are being recommended again by the Project Oversight Committee. The TCC has heard the same presentation, and they will come to you next month with their final recommended list. And so we're looking at programming almost all of the 62 million. I will add, and I said it in one of the focus groups in the orientation, but I don't think I repeated it in every one. The Project Oversight Committee looks at a project application as a unit. So they don't take little parts and fund little parts of an application. So if you have a request for 3 million and the engineering work is, say, 500,000, at this time, they're choosing not to fund that little bit. So there's some pretty big risk in doing that for the town. Number one, there may not be enough funding. Your project might not score as well for the next round. And then you're left started a project. And there are some clauses in some of the phases, especially on paying back the federal funds. So at this time, they're not recommending any parts of applications. So that's 100% of the funding. And again, so the next steps will be, I'll present again to the TCC, or our POC chair will do that. And then we'll come back to you and ask for action to approve the 2023 fall call projects and then amend our TIP. With that, I will take questions. A lot of questions.
Great. Any questions for Jennifer at this time? If not, I think some comments. Commissioner Osborne, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, on behalf of the town of Cornelius, our town commissioners and mayor, I'd like to thank the board for your upcoming consideration of the discretionary funding. And the recommendations made by the Project Oversight Committee. The funding will allow the town of Cornelius to reduce our financial commitments in a substantial manner. It allows us to keep moving on the key transportation projects at hand. I can't overstate how important these existing projects are, not only to the town of Cornelius, but to our entire region. So thank you again for your future consideration.
Right, Mayor Becker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jen, just one question. This will come back to us next month for a vote.
Yeah.
Is the only thing that may specifically change the Helms Road? Or is that,
I don't
know if that may change with the.
I don't think that's going to change. I think what the Project Oversight Committee recommended to keep the score as is, but to revisit how we score in the future.
Okay.
So it's sort of, you know, we don't want to change scoring midstream. I think that the Project Oversight Committee really needs to hear some presentations from the modeling group, hear more about the crash data available. And, you know, we try to do this as much data driven as possible. And the fact that I can look at a road extension and go, oh, we could use this road. You know, if I take the most of that and relook at the score on this one, the ranking didn't change. Plus, again, with the 7 million, if you look at the list, you'd have to cancel out a couple other projects. So I appreciate your question. It's Thank you for clarifying that.
Sure, I do.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
All right. Other questions for Jennifer? All right. If not, we're gonna again hear this for next month for the vote. once it's finalized at TCC. So any questions that you think of in between time, or if your staff has questions, obviously Jennifer is fabulous to help with those and vet out any questions that you would have. So, all right, moving on. Mr. Cook. And for those of you that have not met Mr. Cook, our leader, fearless leader, right?
I don't know about the fearless part. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight to our first meeting. And for some of you, a little bit of this will be a repeat from the November meeting, but for the new folks, well, none of it will be new. But so we're going to be repeating some of the information that was presented to the board as it was constituted in November to make sure, or at least to try to make sure that you have a full understanding of what the Unified Planning Work Program is. So tonight we'll go through some basics about what it is, talk about some updates since the November meeting, then get into the funding details, how much is going to be available next fiscal year, get specifically into a program coming out of the Federal Transit Administration, the Section 5303 program, talk about local planning studies and carryovers, and we'll explain that term in a few minutes, and then talk about next steps. So in terms of what the UPWP is, it's just kind of a long term for our budget. That's what it is. We are now working on our fiscal year 25 budget, much like some of you may have started working on your town or city's FY25 budget. We are a little bit earlier than you are. We have to have this adopted by the end of March based upon NCDOT rules, and they're based upon, in part, federal rules. But we're well underway now on developing our budget. So like any budget, it identifies those planning activities, at least for us, planning activities that we anticipate undertaking throughout the fiscal year. It details all the federal and state funds that are programmed, as well as the local match that is provided for federal funds. And then it includes a description of the work and any products that might result from that work as well. And the UPWP is based upon an in-house staff level document we call the prospectus. It is a staff reference document like you see there on the screen, and it really kind of lays out in more detail all the various tasks and how to be done, and talks about roles and responsibilities of staff, but also of the agencies that support what we do. And speaking of that, what we do in terms of the preparation of the UPWP is done in cooperation with a lot of folks. We have a lot of partners in this. We don't do it alone. Well, a big one is NCDOT, but there's also these other agencies you see listed there from the FHWA, the Metroliner Regional Model. Jennifer was mentioning the modeling folks earlier in her presentation, same group of people. We work closely with Central Liner Regional Council. And then with DOT, in addition to the two divisions that serve our area, we also work closely with the Integrated Mobility Division, that's public transportation, bike and ped planning, and then the Transportation Planning Division. They manage the money that comes from the feds that support what MPOs do, and a lot of other activities. So a lot of partners in what we do. So the budget, or the UPWP, is divided up into 8 categories, or what we call task codes. Data and planning support, that's a lot of the more technical work that is done to support our activities. The travel demand model, land use modeling, also traffic counts are accounted for there. Next is planning process. This is kind of a kitchen sink type category. A lot goes into the planning process task code, the development of our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, or the MTP, as you see listed there, our Comprehensive Transportation Plan, or the CTP, air quality conformity, the congestion management process, a whole slew of things fall under planning process. Special studies is next. That kind of speaks for itself. Anything that might not fit neatly into another category and is a unique, maybe discrete undertaking for that fiscal year or several fiscal years. The Unified Planning Work Program, there's a task code just for this activity of developing the budget and maintaining the budget throughout the year. The Transportation Improvement Program, that includes all the activities that are undertaken throughout the year to develop the Transportation Improvement Program, the prioritization process that you'll be hearing about a lot this coming year. Also, the discretionary program that Jennifer leads. Civil rights compliance and other regulatory requirements. That's where we make sure we adhere to Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. There's environmental justice activities, but also all our public participation activities fall under that heading. And then lastly, statewide and extra regional planning. We have 3 other MPOs in this region and a rural planning organization. We coordinate with them. Also statewide through the North Carolina Association of MPOs, and then throughout the country with the Association of MPOs and involvement with that group. And then lastly is management and operations. This is where we keep the lights on, essentially, just those daily activities that any organization needs to make sure it's running on a regular basis. Grants management, the support for this board and the TCC, all those very basic sort of activities, again, necessary for any organization. So getting into some tasks, I think probably the most important thing for anyone who's unfamiliar with this process to remember is that most of what any MPO does is done on a regular basis, done on a cyclical basis, and usually required by either federal or state law. The Transportation Improvement Program, and again, including the Discretionary Grants Program, the MTP, the CTP, all these issues listed here on the screen, we do them on a regular basis, and pretty much probably 90% of our time, if not more, is spent on these routine items we do on a cyclical basis. Some of them we do every year or constantly, like the TIP. The MTP is updated every 4 years. That is at least about a 2.5 year process in so doing. And it's a constant activity. So again, that first bullet point is probably the most important. The work is on a constant or a cyclical basis. So getting into the funding. There are 3 sources that support the planning activities of the organization. 2 are from the Federal Highway Administration, the Section 104F funds, and the Surface Transportation Block Grant Direct Attributable Funds. Jennifer mentioned this funding source. She said that it's a very flexible funding source. I couldn't agree more. It is extremely flexible, from planning to all sorts of different activities, but that is a major funding source for this organization. And then I did reference at the very beginning, the FTA fund, Section 5303, they support transit planning activities. But there is a local match, as with most federal funds. And for the planning funds and the STBGDA funds, that match is provided by all the member jurisdictions on a per capita basis. However, if your community uses any of those funds for a local planning project, your community is fully responsible for that local match. That is not shared amongst all the member jurisdictions. And then the Section 5303 match is provided by the user as well. And there's a bit of a nuance to that. I'll get to that in a minute when we show the summary of all the funding that's available this year. So in terms of updates for the new members, this is brand new information. For the returning members, this is definitely an update from the November presentation. We did not know the actual amounts we would have at the November meeting. We do know that information now. For the Section 104 FPL funds, we're getting 1.3 million and some change. Unfortunately, that is less than we received last year. For the current fiscal year. In fact, $360,900 less, and I'll be returning to that in a moment. The Section 5303 funds, we have a little over $1.2 million. That the good news there is that's an increase. It's a slight one, but it's an increase. So another update since the November meeting, one aspect of our work program that we include is we identify key initiatives. And these are those activities that we'll be undertaking throughout the year that really will be taking on a significant amount of time and resource from staff and from the technical coordinating committee and probably from this board as well. So we've identified 4 coming up for fiscal year 25. The first one is the 2055 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. That's the most important document any MPO undertakes. It sets out the long-range vision for that organization for at least the next 20 years. So you can see the value of a document like that. And one of the biggest things we'll be starting with in the next fiscal year is the development of the roadway project ranking process. That is a very time-consuming effort to develop our fiscally constrained project plan. Again, looking 20 years ahead, what we want to see built and constructed from a roadway perspective in our region. By the way, there are other elements to this plan. It is not a roadway document exclusively, but that does take up a lot of time and resources, and that's why I've highlighted it there. We'll continue with Beyond 77 implementation, particularly the development of the coalition that was recommended by the final report, and that is actually underway now, and it really will get going in the next fiscal year. Safety will be a top priority for us as an organization. We are applying for a RAISE grant. That's Rebuilding America's Infrastructure. And I apologize, but I forget what the S and the E stand for, but the first part is Rebuilding America's Infrastructure. And that grant will be a safety related grant. In the event we do not get that grant, we are still going to be programming funds for a safety plan. It'll be a lesser plan. We're looking at maybe in the millions, about $3 or $4 million for the RAISE grant. We don't have that kind of flexibility, I'm afraid, if we take it on our own. But we will be undertaking a safety plan if we're unsuccessful with the RAISE grant. And then lastly, complete streets. This will be in conjunction with our safety efforts, and we will be really implementing federal requirements through this, but we do want to raise this up as a key initiative for the next fiscal year. So in terms of funding, that was it for the updates, but let's get into the funding. This summarizes what we will have available for the next fiscal year. And you can see those three funding sources there, the federal amount there on the left-hand column, and then the local match in the middle, and then the total. And there's an asterisk there by the STBGDA number, and I'll get back to that because it relates to the shortfall into the PL money. And then the other issue I wanted to come back to was the local match of the Section 5303 funds. I presented this as with a number there. The truly local match that local communities pay is actually half of that. The local match for this funding source is handled a little bit different, whereas NCDOT picks up half of this. So the truly local match that the providers provide is again half of that number. I'm displaying it this way for simplicity's sake tonight, but so that number, that local match is true. Again, truly local match is half of that number. So in terms of that shortfall, returning to that, there are two fundamental reasons why there is this shortfall. North Carolina's population is rapidly increasing, and it's increasing in our urban areas. And the way the funds are calculated that every MPO gets, and there are currently 19 MPOs in North Carolina, that is calculated based upon the urban area population. And with the urban area population growing, there's more stress on that funding pot, but the pot isn't really growing a whole lot, if at all. So there's more, many more, well, just one, and there's one additional MPO. Let me jump down to that. There's one, so we'll get up to 20 MPOs in the state. It's, the city of Southern Pines exceeded the 50,000 population threshold that mandates the establishment of an MPO. So there are more hands in the pot, both in terms of the existing urban areas growing, and then another MPO in the state that's taking advantage of a funding pot that just isn't getting that much bigger. That's the reason why we're experiencing less money this year for this funding source. What staff sees as a reasonable solution to that problem, to hold us harmless, if you will, for the next fiscal year, is to increase that allocation of STBGDA money by that same amount, $360,900. Traditionally, for the past 5 years, I think it's been, we've taken down 1.1 million in STBGDA money. So we would just increase that by that $360,000. That's our recommendation. We will be looking at how spending has been going so far this current fiscal year in the first 2 quarters to determine if that's necessary. We've not gotten all the information for the first 2 quarters yet, but we'll see what that looks like to determine if that number is necessary. However, I do think that we will probably come back to you with a recommendation for that $360,900. The reason being, going back to the MTP process, that will be a very time consuming, a very resource heavy activity for staff. And so to compare FY 25 to FY 24 when we weren't doing that might be a bit unfair. So I don't want to leave us shorthanded when we're undertaking the most important task that any MPO can undertake, the development of its metropolitan transportation plan. But we will come back to you with that information at the February meeting as to what our spending looks like for the current fiscal year. Getting specifically into the section 5303 allocations. We did get again a little bit more money. The bottom line number you see there is the federal amount plus the local match. So it's more than what you saw on the previous screen. But the good news here is that all the requests that we received from the providers and others, we were able to fulfill. So no, we didn't have to cut back on anyone's request. That's good news. CRTPO staff also uses this funding, as you can see down there, for our transit providers work group, tip development. Transit aspects of the development of the MTP, our UPWP procedural matters. This could be also include administrative activities such as grants management, reimbursement procedural tasks, and working with the communities that use these dollars. And then CRTPO will be using an additional $66,000 to help supplement our complete streets activities. Good news here is that there is no local match for that $66,000 based upon Federal Transit Administration policy. So it's kind of free money in a way. And to that point about complete streets activities, that is a requirement of the IIJA that Jennifer mentioned a few moments ago, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. That is the transportation reauthorization bill passed a couple of years ago now. And one aspect of that act was that MPOs are now required to use at least 2.5% of their PL funds to support activities that increase, as you can see there, safe and accessible options for multiple travel modes for people of all ages and abilities. And that's a quote, I believe a direct quote from the act itself. And that's widely interpreted as being complete streets, essentially. And our obligation for FY 25 is $44,300, not a huge sum of money. And that's one reason why we want to supplement that money with the FTA's 5303 funds to the tune of $66,000 to give us enough money so we can do something meaningful next fiscal year with those funds. Now I'm going to get into a little bit covering some of what Jennifer discussed during her presentation about the discretionary program planning studies. You saw pretty much the same slide in Jennifer's presentation. These are the planning projects that came through the fall call of the discretionary grants program. We are assuming right now that they will be fully funded by this board, so we'll be including them in the work program next fiscal year. Those same three projects coming from Central Iowa Regional Council, the Metro Iowa Regional Model Team, and then lastly, the critical intersection analysis from Union County. I think this might be the third time we are helping support Union County's critical intersection analysis program. So we've been very happy to partner with the county to keep that project going. It's been very successful for Union County. And then there were some older studies that are still ongoing that need some additional support going into fiscal year 25, or at least we thought there were. So this is that carryover term I used earlier. Any project that is not complete during the fiscal year in which it was originally funded has to be carried over into the next fiscal year, or possibly the one following that. And that's what we're talking about here. And we had several ongoing that we thought were going to be needing money to take them over the June 30th deadline. But it looks at this point that only the SEAM project, that's the Charlotte to Statesville Trail, that's about the only one we think will need some additional money. The projects in Mint Hill, Troutman, and Huntersville look like they will be complete by the end of the fiscal year. So that's good news. Those projects are complete, and they were from FY 23. For FY 24, these are a bit more recent. and more of them need some money for fiscal year 25. The first one listed there, we've learned from Central Lina that they will not need money going into next year. But the ones in Indian Trail, Matthews, Morrisville, and Stallings, all of them will be carried over into the next fiscal year. And we'll continue to work with them to make sure that these numbers are correct, and we don't want to leave them shorthanded next fiscal year. So that this is still a little bit of a work in progress. So we do have some remaining issues. I mentioned earlier, we'll be looking at our expenditures for the first 2 quarters, and we hope to have that done by the end of January so we can report to the Technical Coordinating Committee and the board in February. Again, those exact carryover amounts, have to make sure that we get that precise. And then we'll begin those task code allocations. Those were those 8 categories that I mentioned at the beginning. We'll start putting dollars to each one of those categories and provide those to you at the February meeting. So in January, for the rest of the month, we will probably hold at least 1 transportation staff meeting. These are meetings we hold every Wednesday with members of your local staff, and to keep them updated on what we're doing as an organization. We'll submit a draft NCDOT by the end of the month, and then next month come back to you again, as I mentioned earlier, with second drafts to both you and the Technical Coordinating Committee. Hold a transportation staff meeting if necessary. And then in March, we'll come back to you with a request to adopt the UPWP. And that'll be accompanied by a recommendation from the Technical Coordinating Committee. Everything we bring to you for action has some recommendation from the TCC. So this is another plug for keeping in touch with your TCC member on a regular basis. They can provide very valuable information to you. And of course, staff is always available as well. And then we'll submit the UPWP to NCDOT and the FTA after the adoption. So that was a lot of information, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. And again, if you don't have any tonight, by the way, feel free to reach out to me at any time. I'm happy to answer any of those questions as well. So if there are any tonight, happy to field them.
Correct. Questions for Bob in regards to the budget? That was a lot of
I
information.
know it was.
Very quickly. Yeah. Yes. Commissioner Driggs.
You mentioned beyond I-77, and I just want to clarify for new members, we have had conversations on CRTPO about how we're going to tackle I-77 South. That is different. So beyond I-77 is a general planning process for the entire corridor, if I'm describing that accurately.
You are.
Bob.
Thank you.
Just wanted to make sure we're clear, because I think returning members have had some confusion about that. My question for you was, do you expect there will be any material change in the matching contribution amounts for members as a result of
No,
this?
I don't. If we keep that same number by increasing the amount of money we take down from the STBGDA source, then the match should remain the same from the current fiscal year to FY25. One thing we have been tried to do over the years is to keep that as constant as possible. Now, again, I think it's a good opportunity to remind folks that if your community is taking on a planning study, you'll be obligated to pay the local match for that. So it might look a little bit different for that reason, but the baseline match should not be increasing in any substantial way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great question. Yes, sir.
Yeah, do we have an explanation as to why the population is growing, but the money's not, the funding is not? Why is there that discrepancy, and is it something that'll catch up? Or is it just some?
As a part of the transportation reauthorization bill, there just wasn't enough money in there to support particularly a rapidly growing state like North Carolina, where all the growth is in the urban areas. And that's true in most places, of course, but I think our growth is outpacing the funds in such a way that it's just impossible for us to keep up.
And are these federal funds or state funds?
Federal.
Federal, okay, so
Yes.
that explains it. Thank you.
Great question. Others? I'm hearing no questions currently, so we will hear this again in February. So if you think of questions or have any in between that, you can certainly reach out. Before you leave up there on the dais, just again, we have a lot of new people. So would you mind maybe just recognizing your team?
Absolutely.
everybody-
No, you're really putting me on the spot.
Yes.
Travis Johnson is sitting right here. You can all stand up. Paul Benton is our staff engineer, and who else is over here? Jennifer, you saw Jennifer Stafford, Theo Thompson, Will Snyder, and Neil.
There he is.
Kendall Clanton is here. Oh, Judy Dellard. And who else is here? There, and Tamika Day. Tamika manages all the money that I was talking about tonight. So she is the most important part of the organization when you get right down to it. And two people are out tonight. Jarrell is out tonight, and Brian is out tonight.
Okay, great. Thank you all for being
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you for taking time.
Thank you for letting me do that.
Get that. Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. Thanks very much.
Super. Couple of things before we get to Neil's upcoming agenda items. We're so, grateful to Mr. Lathrop that comes every meeting just about from the NCDOT board, which I call the mothership of our organization, if you will. Is there anything that you'd like to share from the NCDOT board that we'd find beneficial? Like there's more money or anything exciting like that?
I kind of put me on the
I
spot.
did, sorry. And if you don't follow Tony on LinkedIn, he does great videos. So, if you want to go ahead and follow him on those too.
I would say, most of you may, I guess there's a lot of new faces here. I chair the finance committee of the Board of Transportation, and I have for 7 years now. It's hard to believe. So that's where a lot of my focus is. We just updated our spend plan, which deals with our revenue forecast and the state budget, which was late this year. So we did that, and we have, in the winter months, there's typically somewhat of a lull just because of weather on projects, but then with the weather, it heats up in the summer, and activity heats up then literally
Yeah.
and in construction and maintenance and all that. And we're looking at trying to issue some build NC bonds, I think, and some other bonds later this year. So all that's to say, one important point is, like a lot of folks, we don't have near enough money for all the needs. So we go through, and you'll hear more about this probably from the staff, a process every year called the STI process, which prioritizes the projects and starts with this group. So that we prioritize our projects that come into it. And so we have the departments manage really well. So we've got a good cash position, but it's like having, 6 months of paychecks saved up and $1 million mortgage that you have to pay. So our cash is about between 20 and 25% of our total commitments in terms of projects. So we're always cash flowing it, so to speak, cash flowing that work so that our industry partners have predictable work streams, and as much as possible, we can have a schedule that has some certainty to it. But y'all call me anytime. And Dale was asking me a question before the meeting about Division 10. So anytime, call me.
Great. We appreciate that. For those of you that have been on the board for a little while, last year we tackled looking at the update of our memorandum of understanding, our MOU. And throughout different meetings, we realized that we really needed some independent counsel to look at that language, to make sure that we're really understanding not just the spirit of the language and the information, but that we're following that through. So we did a RFP for an attorney. We finally got one to reply, and the gentleman that's been working on that has experienced some health issues, and so he's a little bit delayed on things. So hopefully we'll have a little bit more of an update in February, but just wanted to let you know that is still obviously ongoing. And as we get the attorney back healthy and back on the project, hopefully we'll have a little bit more information. Yes, sir, Tony.
I meant to say one other thing, and this deals with funding, and that is as much as we can work together on things that are priorities for us or for our regions, that helps us get money. At all different levels but especially big projects. And I've talked to a lot of people in this room about that, but there's a lot of new faces here. And not just within our MPO, but with other MPOs even in this greater region, because there's a bunch of them. So I do want to put that plug in as well.
Great point. As we all continue to say, we win together and we lose together. Last thing before I turn it over to Neil. In the past, we've had education sessions that we have done various different ways. Some were part of the meeting, some were before the meeting at 5 o'clock. So I'd really like some feedback on doing the education sessions. And here's going to be your options, so you know which way you want to vote before you put your hand up. If you would prefer to have the education sessions built into the agenda at our regular meeting, that's going to be one option. Or the other option, if you would be open to coming, I think we've started those before, Neil, at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
From 5 to 6 for the education session, grab some food and come in here at 6. So those of you that prefer to have the education sessions baked into the agenda as part of our regular meeting, give me kind of a thumbs up or some kind of indication, just so we kind of have an idea baked in. And if you would prefer to have them at 5 o'clock, that would be separate, coming early. Okay. We've got one taker that wants to come early. All right, okay, super. Okay. So like I said, that just kind of gives us an idea as we're trying to plan out the schedules and going forward to be able to include those, or with, if you'd like to come early. So depending on the topic, we may have, one occasionally that does come at 5 o'clock if it's going to be a little bit longer of a nature. Otherwise, we'll try to bake those into the agenda. And there might not be one at every meeting, depending on the number of agenda items, to be conscious of everybody's time, if that's okay. Okay, I think that was all of the additional notes that I have. So Neil, I'm gonna turn it back over to you for upcoming agenda items.
Thank you, Chair Qualls. In terms of upcoming agenda items, the February 21st CRTPO board agenda is anticipated to include the approval of the CRTPO discretionary project funding allocations that Jennifer provided an information report to the board on tonight. And then we will anticipate 2 information items. We'll have another update on the FY 2025 Unified Planning Work Program that Bob spoke to us on tonight. We'll have a little more detail, a little more finality in terms of the task code allocations and some of the other outstanding items that he identified tonight. And then we will have an update from NCDOT on the I-77 corridor. And in advance of that update, NCDOT is preparing a fact sheet about the corridor, and I will be emailing that out to the board members soon. It's really intended to provide you all with just some historical context as to some of the needs along that corridor. So I'll be looking to email that to you all once we receive it from NCDOT soon here. I do have just a couple more quick announcements. Save the date for the 2024 joint MPO roundtable with the Gaston Cleveland Lincoln MPO. That's our sister transportation planning organization across the Catawba River and the CRTPO board. This is an annual event we've held over the past couple of years, really intended to foster regional collaboration amongst the elected officials throughout this region. The theme this year will be kind of a continuation on identifying alternative sources of funding. That joint MPO roundtable meeting will be held Thursday, February 29th from 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. at the Gaston College Kimbrell Center in Belmont, North Carolina. And we will be providing some additional information to you all in an email about that to make sure we get it on everyone's calendars. And then also the Federal Railroad Administration will be holding a long distance Amtrak service study committee meeting here. And it's going to be hosted by the CRTPO on Wednesday, February 7th. And if you want additional information on that, Amtrak long distance service study, please contact our transit planner, Jarrell Leonard. And then the last thing is just a reminder again about the ethics filing requirements. The deadline for returning members is April 15th to file your statement of economic interest and real estate disclosure forms with the NC Ethics Commission. For new members, if this is your first time on the board, please have that filed as soon as possible. And looking around the room, I think most of the new members have successfully submitted those filing requirements, but if you haven't, please make sure to do that because they can levy fines before the April 15th deadline for new members. And I can answer some very basic questions about the process and the deadlines, but if you have questions about filing and more detailed questions, Suzanne Singh with the State Ethics Commission is our liaison, and she's excellent to work with, very responsive if you email her or give her a call. So Chair Qualls, that is all my updates for tonight.
Great, great. Any board member comments, questions? Everybody's good. All right, great. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And we got a first and a second. All of those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, safe travels. Keep warm. We'll see y'all in February.
It's a good meeting, an hour even.
Hey.
Yeah.